story, part philosophical thesis on cooking and just life in general. And it's just a joy to watch, and it's one that I'm going to revisit time and time again. I think over the next, decade, 15 years, 20 years, whatever. And so,
To me, this is the performance of his from this year that's really being underlooked, because like he disappears into Trump, and it's amazing that he was willing to do that, because I can imagine that there were quite a few people who were sent the script for this and were like, oh hell no, I'm never gonna touch this, are you kidding me? But so
Yep.
it took some bravery.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt. That is Chuck. This is episode 60. We are officially in the doldrums of January, otherwise known as the slowest time of the year for film. It's a time for reflection, for playing catch up, and for considering the best and the worst that 2024 had to offer. Today's episode will be largely devoted to Chuck and I presenting our top 10 movies and our top 5 TV seasons of 2024, along with some supplemental categories. What was the worst film? What was the most overrated? What was the most underrated? We will soon find out. But we are not the only ones playing favorites. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association held their annual Red-Headed Stepchild to the Oscars, otherwise known as the Golden Globes. We're going to go over the results. And then finally, what would a look at the past be without a glimpse at the future? We're going to discuss our most anticipated films for the year ahead, 2025. Please hit the thumbs up button if you like what you see. Subscribe if you have not already. And Chuck, I guess as just an appetizer to get us going, how did the year 2024 treat you on a personal level, on a movie level, whatever?
Well, a lot of change personally.
Mm-hmm.
Angie used to be a reporter at the Minot Daily News with me, and in the fall she started working as a paraprofessional working with special education students. Luca got a year older. November is shooting up like a tree. They are a handful to deal with, as you may have noticed if you watch this, on a week to week basis. But in general, as far as movies go, the general thing about 2024 that surprised me the most was just how much with vital and genuinely like artistic and fulfilling movies there were. Like 'cause sometimes there's just like maybe like a handful where I'm like, yeah, like those are the cream of the crop, but I found myself kind of having to kill my darlings a little bit when it came to picking my favorites for the year, because there were so many that I could have looked at or pointed to, and then there were just so many movies that I didn't get to see that I know I really want to. I just don't have the time. What about
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I think, 2024 is going to go down, I think, as a good year for film. There was a lot out there, a lot of variance, a lot of crazy out there stuff. And then, just kind of I think 2024 was the first full year where it felt like, theaters were back. We're finally sort of they're finally sort of recovering in full from the pandemic, and we've got a number of great blockbusters this year. We got a number of great indie films, and so yeah, 2024 will go down as a good year, I think. And that's no more the case that we're gonna see than with these results from the Golden Globes.
Yeah, yeah, I prematurely threw that up there. I just heard you say it, and I was like, click
Yeah.
the button. But yeah, of course, we had Nikki Glazer hosting it,
Yep.
and apparently everything that was expected to win pretty much did. But were there any big shockers, or was it basically just the favorites were the favorite?
There was a couple shockers. I mean, there was like Honora won nothing. That was probably like the biggest thing of the night. Which to be clear, I fully agree with. I was not that over the moon about that movie, and I'm sort of glad that its sort of award prospects have died a little bit. And then of course, Wicked, as popular as that has been, that won absolutely nothing except for the stupid blockbuster award that they invented last year for Barbie. And um, but here I guess the biggest thing, this is kind of a surprise to me. It's that the movie Amelia Perez won 4 awards, including Best Comedy or Musical, one of the top awards of the night. And I find this surprising because this is a film that has gone through the ringer as far as its sort of awards cycle goes, where when it premiered at Cannes, critics went absolutely nuts for the movie, hailing it as a masterpiece. And, this often happens with movies that premiere at film festivals or early press screenings just in general because the people who go to those things, they want to feel as if the money and the time and the traveling is all worth it. And, when you see a movie early, you want to feel special. You want to feel as if, you are one of the few people in the world who has seen this movie. And so it has to be good. It must be a good movie. And so,
Hmm.
it was hailed as a masterpiece. And then when the general public got a hold of this movie, all of these bad reviews started coming out, and essays were being written about all sorts of things, such as, cultural appropriation and questioning the movie's authenticity. And
It's
Selena Gomez's,
transness, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
the use of the trans character and everything. Selena Gomez's awful Spanish was criticized,
Apparently, I'm not,
and
not authentic Mexican. You know.
yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Have you
And so,
seen the clip from that from the Vagina Plastizo?
yeah, I
That
have,
musical
yeah.
number? What
Yep.
the fuck? Like that? Like it's like I thought it was like an SNL parody type of a thing,
Hmm.
but no, that
Yeah, I mean it looks crazy. The
yeah.
movie looks absolutely nuts, and that's why I'm surprised that essentially it appears that the movie has basically recovered in some respects. And I don't really know what's behind this.
Okay.
Some people think that, Netflix is putting expensive and expansive awards campaign, effort behind this film. Um,
It's okay.
but yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what's behind its sort of recovery as an awards favorite. But yeah, that was probably my personal biggest surprise because I've been following that since the very beginning. And the other sort of big surprise of the night was, and I've got to get your thoughts on this. Demi Moore won Best Actress for The Substance, and her output for the last 20 years has been pretty bad. And but I think the biggest surprise or the bigger surprise is a lot of people would consider The Substance a, quote unquote horror movie. And so some people are seeing this as a step forward for the horror genre because award shows generally do not like horror. And so, yeah, what do you think about that idea?
Well, that is a movie I did see. That was one of the
Okay.
movies I scrambled to see and left off my list
Hmm.
for just the strength of the year and my preferences. But I'll just say that that particular movie, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's body horror, but to me, it's just a Cronenbergian character study.
Hmm.
Like that's really what it is, and it's like it never scared me. It disturbed me. It made me want to hurl, and it had one of the most satisfyingly disgusting, gory conclusions to any movie this century. But yeah, like I think people. This is just what happens. Like we're all just trying to grasp at something to make it significant. And
Hmm.
like if she wins the Oscar for it, it would be well deserved. I will just put that out there. But I'm just not quite so, caught up in the I don't know. I am not my self-worth and existence is not tied up to the outcomes of these award shows anymore. That was certainly true in my teens and early 20s, but that stopped being the case as I got older. So I'm like, you know what? Good for her, but calm
Mhm.
down, everybody. They're still giving this. They're giving Night Country fucking awards. I had
Yeah.
forgotten that Night Country was a 2024 product, technically,
Mhm.
because like it did it premiere in 23.
No,
It was a
it
fully
was
2024.
January.
Oh,
Yeah,
what a
January.
long ass year then, because I had put that out of my mind. Then I saw it pop up. I'm like, are you serious? We're still talking about fucking Night Country? God
Yeah.
damn. God, I'm so pissed off about that still.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
the seeing the Brutalist do so well after, seeing it makes complete fucking
Mhm.
sense. This is like the kind of movie that Hollywood is going to be gaga over for a variety of different reasons. And it's so weird seeing the trajectory of Brady Corbett. Like he was just the other guy in funny games to me, like his
Mhm.
whole career. In the he was in Mysterious Skin. Like he does have like a very interesting filmography as an actor, but of the movies he's directed, I'd really only seen the the Childhood of a Leader.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of his movies, to be
Yeah,
frank. And
box looks just looked
uh
like crap. Like I'm not
yeah.
into. I wasn't into that. They had to reinstall, honey. Just give it some time to finish. Uh, the
But
Christmas
yeah,
the
I'm
Christmas Fire tablet is acting up.
oh sure, yeah. I'm glad, yeah, I'm glad that movie did well too. I definitely still want to see it. And yeah, I mean, like you said, a lot of the other stuff was pretty expected. Shogun kind of coming away with most of the TV awards was deserved and expected. And yeah, it was a
Recognize.
pretty uneventful night, I will say. I spent the night sort of uh changing the channels between the Globes and then the Sunday Night Football Vikings game that was
Ooh,
on.
ooh, that
And
was a
so
good
I
game.
didn't yeah. So I didn't watch the whole thing this
What?
year, but from what I saw, it was pretty expected. And Nikki Glazer, I will say, was a upgrade from host Joe Coy from the
Ugh,
previous year.
yeah.
That was awful, but yeah, pretty uneventful night, and I think we would do well to move on from it now.
But I just want to ask, what was
Yeah.
the edgiest joke that was told?
Oh, I mean, not much, just like stuff, the typical stuff
By
like,
the time they're almost
you
done.
know, Diddy jokes, stuff like that, joking about people who are associated or with P. Diddy that might or may not have been in the same room, that type of thing. Where people are kind of grabbing the nape of their neck and like letting the steam out from their neckline, like, ooh, that type of thing. But yeah, it was pretty tame. I mean, the only you can tell that people were grasping at straws to come away with some sort of controversial moment from the night, and the only thing that they could grab onto was this sort of slightly awkward exchange between The Rock and Vin Diesel, where like Vin Diesel was on stage presenting, and he just basically acknowledged that The Rock was in the audience, and everybody was suddenly like, "Oh my God, they're restarting their feud from the Fast and the Furious movies," and it was just a complete nothing burger of a moment. But
Well,
yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
That's pretty much all I had to say. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to mention,
As
but
someone who
I think
didn't
we,
watch it, it's time to move on. I
yeah.
was stalling a little bit trying to get this thing to
Mhm.
work. All of her streaming apps aren't working. Honey, I think you're gonna have to
Oh
watch
shit.
PBS Kids. Oh my god, even
Well, here,
that's
why
not
don't
working.
our first category for our awards is most underrated. Is that right?
That is correct. And
So
you
let me kind
might
of
not be able to.
explain
You might just
here
have to play the
what,
game.
before we get into like the meat of this one, let me explain
Oh,
sort of
it's
how I
fine.
approach this. To me, most underrated can mean many things. And for me, that means a movie that sort of had the largest disparity between the actual acclaim and popularity it received, and then how much more that you think it should have gotten. As far as this is a movie that I thought was good, but everybody else thought was bad, or this was a movie that I thought was serviceable that everybody else thought was awful, or this was a movie that I thought was excellent that everybody else thought was just good, was just fine. And so um it's it can mean many different things. For me, it means a movie that I thought was pretty fantastic that just nobody paid attention to, nobody
Yeah.
cared about. And so, with that being said, my movie is What You Wish For. And this was a film that, nobody saw. It's a great little crime thriller set in the world of fine dining. Um, if you've seen the movie, you know that it hides a twist, but that twist is revealed very early in the film. And I think the key to the movie's success is that the movie continues to be compelling after the twist is revealed. It's not just a thing where, that's the only cards the movie has to show. And so
Yeah.
um once the kimono is lifted, as they say, the film is still pretty compelling. And nobody cared about this movie. It was barely written about.
Yeah.
It didn't even get a theatrical release, I don't think. It just kind of got dropped as like a 5.99 rental on all of the digital rental services, and then eventually it made its way to Hulu, and now it's picking up a little bit of traction on Hulu, which is nice, but for the most part, yeah, nobody really cared. And even its leading man, Nick Stahl, has kind of faded back into whatever cloud of obscurity he's been living in for the past 20 years, and now he's kind of out of the picture again. But
Which is
yeah, that
unfortunate
was
because he was so good in that. And
yeah,
in full disclosure,
he
I
was
nearly
great.
picked this one as well. I was, but I kind of just, I don't know what you call it, but my philosophy was like, what is the one movie to me that was utterly undeniable that everyone is
Mhm.
acting like isn't a great movie? And
Yeah.
to me, that was, if I'll fast forward through this clip here,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
a little bit here,
And to be,
yeah,
I agree with this too.
yeah,
I totally agree with this.
is the Apprentice. And you know the acting is great, the writing is great in this. The person who wrote it was someone who was covering Trump's 2016 campaign, and they did impeccable research, and they, in terms of like what I knew the lore of Donald Trump to be, and it just, the end result is just shattering. Like the ending birthday party, that
Yeah.
with Michael Strong as Roy Cohn, he just he's just a it's just magnificent to like give the full spectrum of like he's an obscure character in the American
Mhm.
story, even though he's been getting his fingers into so many different things, and to go from the Rosenbergs to the first non-consecutive president in Donald Trump, it's just like, what the hell. And like having Roger Stone pop up, so like as a political nerd, junkie guy, this was candy to me. And it was so shocking to see so many people like act like this movie wasn't a big deal. But
Mhm.
ultimately, I think what it came down to was the fact that it found humanity in a really disgusting person. Like, and I'm
Mhm.
saying that as someone who voted for Donald Trump in the past. Like, he is a just decrepit creature, and it's so unfortunate that they'd be like, oh well, we can't acknowledge anything that might be appealing about him, or that might be like at least give you some sympathy, or like even like make you root for him in a Wolf of Wall Street kind of way. That there's more to this guy than what you hear on CNN. And if you really want to understand what he's putting us all through, take in some art that informs a little bit on that. And yeah, I will talk about this movie more later, but yeah, that was my
Mhm.
pick. Moving on to Overrated,
Yes.
I really liked your pick for this because every film nerd worth their salt was all about it. Yeah, that was the wrong graphic. I was in a rush. This is Overrated, but you had In
Yeah.
a Violent Nature. Why did you pick this one? I didn't see it.
Yeah, so this was a slasher film that was released this year, very Jason Voorhees-esque movie that people just went apeshit over this past spring. And it's about a group of 20 somethings. They're camping out in the wilderness. They come across like an unmarked grave that has a locket that's like sitting there. And they basically remove the locket from the grave. And that causes the resurrection of
Oh,
this murderous slasher movie villain. And the sort of
interesting.
gimmick behind this movie is that the movie exclusively follows the killer around. Like instead of the campers. Normally the campers would be the main characters of the movie, but this movie follows the killer around. The campers are only seen and heard from at a distance for most of the movie. And I think this is an interesting
No bumper.
premise, but it's a short film premise, not a feature film presence. So what this movie basically amounts to is it's 90 minutes of watching a serial killer slowly walk around the wilderness, and it's punctuated by probably about 4 or 5 scenes of extremely fake looking graphic, slasher movie kills. There is no score to the movie. There is no soundtrack to the movie. The killer never talks. It's devoid of any audio other than like, wilderness noises, the wind, the birds, the campers. And so the whole affair, it's just incredibly dull. It's lacking in any sort of direction or point of view. It's a very subjectively made movie, and I just found it very boring. And what people really go back to for this movie is one 30-second film, or 30-second scene. You ask anybody who's seen this, what did you like about this movie? And they just keep going back to this thing that people are calling the yoga kill. Like, oh, I loved the yoga kill. It was so brutal. It was so, and I'll admit in theory it is a very novel, cool slasher movie death, but in practice, it's just distractingly fake looking, and like I said, it amounts to like 30 seconds of this 90-minute film. And yeah, it was a dull movie, and it's for the most pretentious of horror movie film buffs, in my opinion. And yeah, I thought it was not very good.
It's an exercise,
Yes.
more so than anything else. And it's like, yeah, good for you. You managed to make it feature length, but was that worth our time? Like like is it worth the hype? I understand where you're coming from. I didn't realize that there was a supernatural angle to it. That makes it
Mhm.
interesting. But yeah, they probably don't explore any of the like who the killer is and why
No.
and that you can't do that. To me, it's like you can't dangle that carrot in front of me and not have a rabbit hole at the end of it for me to dive into.
Mhm.
Um, so maybe I'll check this out once it, I guess, becomes more available, if it ever becomes more available. As it was prematurely revealed by my lack of attention there, my pick is Wicked. Which I did have kind things to say about, but oh my god, yeah, and I have this up here because I don't dare use a clip from it, lest Universal take down our video. But just boring, just a boring experience throughout most of it, and it only
Mhm.
really starts becoming worth watching in like a really kind of like with In a Violent Nature. People, I think, really only have one part of this movie to really like be excited about, and that's when they get to Oz. and things start actually happening. I am not at all interested in Wizard of Oz Hogwarts, which is what like 80% of the movie is. And you can't have it be that fucking long and only have the last half hour be what is like actually like uplifting and thrilling and worth it. Like it's not interesting enough. I'd rather just read the fucking book. Yeah, there's some good musical sequences that we both appreciated when we talked about it in our feature review of it. But apart from Defying Gravity and like I forget what the other track is in that like medley at the end of it, but that's all I can remember, and like that's really all that I like. If I think about anything, it's that rush I got at the end of the movie, and now I see the part two. I don't understand the titling of it. It's called For Good,
I
Wicked for
guess, yeah.
Good. Like I don't. I'm not into it enough to like understand if there's significance to that. But
I think it's
yeah,
a just a double entendre. I think it's just like it's like for good as in like it's gonna be the second and final movie, and then for good as in like good as in good natured or like
yeah.
um positive, I guess. So I don't understand it either though.
You have it made my smooth brain understand better. But that was our overrated picks. What was the
Yeah.
worst movie you saw this year?
Yeah, so the worst movie I actually sat down and watched the whole thing of was Horizon: An American Saga Part 1. This is another Part 1 of I guess maybe what was originally supposed to be I think four movies or something, but this movie left me like devoid of any feeling, and to me that's a worse sin than just being an enjoyable bad movie because this was supposed to be Kevin Costner's, Western epic that spanned generations. And people from all over the continent come to settle on a plot of land in like the mid 1800s. But what this is instead is it's a TV series, a limited series that is condensed to 3 hours, and for some reason has like 15 main characters. Like you have no idea who is the protagonist of this movie, who is the antagonist. The film is incredibly hard to follow because like literal years pass between scenes. And I literally think that they probably had like double the amount of footage. Like they probably had like 6 hours of footage and they just left it all on the cutting room floor, or saved it for the hypothetical part two. And characters fall in love for no reason. People are sworn enemies for no reason. We don't know why. It's just a collection of disjointed scenes. And, if you're lucky enough to make it to the end of the 3 hour runtime, you're rewarded with this trailer for this Horizon Part 2, a movie that was supposed to come out in August that has no release date as of right now in
Oh,
in January. And so yeah, it was pretty awful. And I wasn't going to originally mention this, but if you want to see this done better, if you want to see this idea done
I was
well,
gonna say, yeah.
check out Peter Berg's American Primeval that just got released on Netflix because I've been watching that show, and that is basically this movie but done way, way better.
See, I'm glad you mentioned that because like that was on my
Mhm.
radar, but because it keeps popping up in my like real shorts, because like you can watch entire TV shows through like these like
Yeah.
pirated like things. I've seen billions throughout the whole arc of that show just that way. But the whatever the Yellowstone prequel series is, that
Oh, 1923.
yeah, or it might even
Mhm.
be, I'm not sure, like it might be like the 18 whatever, because there's like so many
Mhm.
of them I think at this point. But yeah, like whatever happened between Taylor Sheridan and Kevin Costner, if Kevin Costner had just like not had an ego and played his cards right, he could have just done that. with Taylor Sheridan and had
Yeah.
his character killed off on the main show. But I'm the I'm glad I didn't waste my time with this, because this is just another example of the faded, heralded, master filmmaker past his prime coming back round to do his dream project, kind of like Francis Ford Coppola. But amazingly, neither of us picked Megalopolis, which I think speaks to the aspects of it that are rewarding, and will, allow history to treat it, more kindly as we progress. Because I guess the worst film I saw this year, though, at least the one that I was the most disappointed in, because I'm just, questioning, why did we need this, was The First Omen. This was such a misbegotten, misguided movie. It couldn't have been more dumb to have basically put the whole creation of the Antichrist in the hands of the Catholic Church themselves. Like, there's a famous William Buckley, quote. He didn't originate it, but you must not emanetize the eschaton. And the eschaton is this intangible metaphysical concept that is holding back the apocalypse. It's whatever the seventh seal is. Like, whatever the is gonna be the thing that kickstarts the end of the world, you must not hasten it. And as Catholics, I'm sorry, that just I know that they're rogue, evil, factions within the church, but the fact that they would stoop to bringing Satan into the world to create more believers, that's not what they're doing. They're ending everything by bringing Damien into existence. And I just really don't want to see where this goes. I'm not interested in it. Like I said earlier in the year, watch Immaculate instead. It was way more fucked up, and it had a great, satisfying punctuation at the end of that movie. Did you ever see that one?
I did. Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw. Yeah, I saw both of these, and yeah, you're totally correct. I mean, the last like 5 minutes of this movie are so awful. Like so like it's like a Marvel after credit scene,
yeah.
but for the Omen series. It's so stupid.
And I just wish that we would stop going back to what was, the horror, icons of the 70s, like that, like the movies that made my parents rush to a church after they got out of the theater. Like, we stop looking backwards, like, look forward. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel. This was the worst example of that for me for this year. But yeah, I think that kind of does it for our little special segment. Now we're going to transition to our best of lists, and why don't you take it away with yours as soon as I get it up there?
Yeah, so my top 10 movies, just wanted to say off the bat quick here. The way that I kind of approached this, my only real guideline was, movies that were actually released to the general populace in 2024. I really hate this thing that like a lot of critics do, where they see movies early and then they take like a movie that should be a 2025 movie and they stick it in the previous year just because they saw it early. Like
Yeah,
for instance, there's a movie that's coming out in a week here in January 2025 called I'm Still Here that is showing up on a lot of people's lists. That doesn't come out until January 17th for the general public. And so it's like, okay, it's like what are we doing here? Stick to the actual year. And so that's kind of my only. So you're gonna see some stuff on my list here that maybe showed up on some people's lists last year, but I consider it a 2024. And then real quick, two honorable mentions I wanted to get out of the way. I watched this week. I saw the TV Glow,
yeah,
and I watched the movie Red Rooms. And that was kind of, those two movies were a part of my sort of last ditch effort to kind of just cram stuff in. And both of those movies were really great. I liked both of them. Um, I Saw the TV Glow is just a fantastic, like, you can look into so many things in that movie. What I personally got out of it was it's sort of a the tale of an indoor kid of a who's too obsessed with TV shows. So something that I relate to on a fundamental level. And then Red Rooms was just a completely bonkers, fucked up movie that I just I if you don't know anything about that movie, keep it that way and then go watch it because it is bonkers. But so yeah, those are my two honorable mentions I wanted to say. But yeah, to get into my actual list here, number 10 is Caddo Lake. This is a movie that I've talked about on three occasions now on this show, to try and give this tiny movie a boost with the small reach that we have. There's not much I can say about it, unfortunately, without ruining it. But what I will say is that this movie holds more to it than what you see on the surface. There is a point at the midway point in this movie where everything clicks into place sort of in your mind, and it's just like it really boosts the movie. It makes it into something more than you think it's going to be, and I was really just vibing with it. Number 9, Longlegs. Other than this was the biggest horror movie of the year, other than A Quiet Place and Alien Romulus. And I'm glad that this is one of those rare times that like public opinion lines up with like reality, where it's like, yeah, this thing was amazingly done. It's a really awesome mystery, with really compelling answers. And seven out of 7 days of the week, I'm gonna take a compelling mystery that doesn't quite feed you everything, that doesn't quite spoon feed you everything, over something that is very paint by numbers. And so I would say this movie, more than anything, gave me like True Detective season 1 vibes. It's a high that I've been chasing ever since that show came out. And this is the sort of piece of media that has given me those feelings again to some extent. So yeah, loved it for that. Number 8 is It's What's Inside. This is one that we talked about on the show extensively. If I could give the director of this movie an award, I would give him like the You're Going Places Kid award, because this guy, I can't wait to see what he does next. He All he has to his name other than this film is a bunch of music videos and like teaser trailers for Netflix shows. Like he's the guy who he edits trailers for like Netflix shows. And
Interesting.
so I really want to see where he goes. It's basically the Freaky Friday premise, but taken to the extreme. Loved the editing, loved all of the awesome visual cues this movie had. I love the setting too. This mansion with all this modern art everywhere. Very unique setting. And so, yeah, loved it. Number 7, Ghost Light. This is one I have not talked about on the show before, and so just to kind of give you the 2 cents on it, this was also part of my movie binge in the last 2 weeks. This is a micro budget drama about a blue collar construction worker that sort of accidentally finds himself in a actor's workshop that is putting on a performance of Romeo and Juliet. And this guy is not an actor. He's just your typical like 50-year-old blue collar guy. And he becomes a part of this play. And he kind of finds that the play hits a little too close for comfort emotionally.
Hmm.
And I don't want to spoil exactly what that means, but basically, this movie is doing a lot of what the movie Sing Sing is also doing this year, where it's making the case for art as therapy or using art to sort of regain your lost humanity. And I thought it was so well done. It's the family at the center of this movie, the father, the mother, and the daughter are actually a real life family. They are a real life father, mother, and daughter, and it really lends to the movie's authenticity.
Wow.
And really loved it. You will cry. You will feel real emotions, and so know that going in. And I'm really uh dissatisfied with the amount of traction that this movie didn't gain this year, because this could have easily have been this year's Coda. If you remember that movie from a couple years ago, the Apple movie Coda. But yeah, number six, About Dry Grasses. Already talked about this movie. Not gonna belabor the point on this one. You can go back, I think, literally like 2 episodes and hear me talk about this. This is a Turkish filmmaker, Nuri Bilge Ceylan's muted epic about a morally gray character. Um, of all the movies I watched this year, this movie gave me sort of that palpable feeling of being able to see a singular character change over the course of a movie's running time. And I really, really liked it for that. Number five is Exuma,
Mm-hmm.
my entry from South Korea this year. I love movies that, you know, make you they clue you in on a subject that you had no idea existed until you saw the movie. In this instance, it is the very real life industry of shamans and feng shui in Korea, where, in Korea, feng shui extends to a person's grave, to the place where a person, rests after they die, where you must pick the right grave site for your family members. It must face the right direction. It must be in the right soil. They cannot be surrounded by the wrong people. And if you don't do that, you are cursing your family. And so that is what Exuma is about. And I loved it for that. I love being sort of brought into that world that I knew nothing about. And otherwise, just a very well done Korean horror film. Number four is Dune Part 2. Everybody loved this movie this year. And it is one of those movies that, I think for the most part, book lovers loved, the general public loved. It appealed to everyone, I think. And it made a boatload of fucking cash, ensuring that we are going to get more. And I genuinely think that, one of the last times this feat was accomplished, this feat of this movie made a lot of money, it pleased the general public, and it pleased the hardcore fans. The last time this happened was when the fucking Lord of the Rings movies came out. And it's not something that happens often. And so we must sort of revel in what happened here, that this happened in the first place. And so loved it for that. Number three is The Promised Land. Another movie I have talked about on here before. This is the ultimate man versus nature story about a Danish soldier that tries to settle and tame this barren strip of land in Denmark called the Wild Heath. He has to, contend with the elements, with wildlife, with local gypsies, with land barons. And we don't really get this movie very much anymore. It's the type of movie that is just this, man versus nature, man versus man type film. It kind of reminded me, the feeling this movie gave me was like Mel Gibson's The Patriot,
Okay.
for like lack of a better comparison, I guess.
Maybe in some respects,
But
even it succeeds at everything that Horizon and American Saga failed to do.
yes, that is a very good comparison also. And so yeah, loved it. Number two, Perfect Days. Wim Wenders, a German filmmaker making a movie set in Japan. Love that idea. Love that filmmakers can do that. And this is about a guy who literally cleans bathrooms in Tokyo, and his sort of positive, optimistic outlook on life. And he is sort of challenged on that outlook by a confrontation that he has with someone from his past. And it's a simple, charming film that is unexpectedly deep. Really, really love this one. And my number one movie is The Taste of Things.
This made sense.
And this another foreign filmmaker who is making a movie in a foreign land. This is from a Vietnamese filmmaker named An Hung Tran that is making a movie in France in French. And so I guess I can't really undersell how much I value that idea as an experiment, because my number one and my number two movies are both that sort of thing. And this is just a movie. It's about a world-renowned chef and his assistant of 20 years, who he is also in a relationship with. It's part love story, part philosophical thesis on cooking and just life in general. And it's just a joy to watch. And it's one that I'm going to revisit time and time again. I think over the next, decade, 15 years, 20 years, whatever. And so, yeah, that is my top 10. Yeah, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say, Chuck,
Just
or if
that
you wanted to launch into yours, but
I really need to watch The Taste of Things and several of the other ones that are on your list. Like Exuma has been on my watch list for a really long time. But as someone who has considers Babette's Feast to be one of his favorite films ever, it's incumbent
yeah.
on me to see the next generation, as it were. And it is a fascinating thing. You kind of championed that this trend that we've seen in 2024 with people from foreign lands coming to another place and localizing a movie to it, like
Hmm.
shrugging off their like whatever their cultural baggage might be, and it's like it's worth further analysis, because especially when you consider a Vietnamese person making a French film, like because
Yeah.
that if you know history, that's pretty crazy, and to make it authentically like that, I really need to see it. And I as far as honorable mentions go, I will also shout out the I Saw the TV Glow, as well. That movie, it was a difficult movie,
Yeah.
and I guess Schoenborn's movies so far both have been, kind of like it takes a certain commitment from someone to watch it. And what I have found fascinating about that movie, just to get it out of the way very quickly, is how people who have like walked away from it disappointed have continued to grapple with it and talk about it, especially
Mm.
on True Film. It has come up so many times in the last year from people trying to you know think about why they were disappointed, and then to dig in deeper into that movie to understand it better, or you kind of like tease out its virtues. And apparently Schoenborn is even considering making like a sequel to it, which could
Mm.
be interesting,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of untilled earth in that little universe that she's created. The other one I'll put out there is Hitman by Richard Linklater, just because it was on my list for a couple days and then I took it off in the 10 slot. But after seeing Nosferatu again in theaters with Angie, it
Mm.
it's it because after I saw The Brutalist, something had to go, and I made the radical choice of really bumping this one down.
Yeah.
Oh, Luca, buddy. Oh, you're trying to go places you can't go. Naked baby, naked baby, naked baby. But yeah, it's like I'm an Eggers fanboy. I always will. I loved The Lighthouse. I watched that like as like a comfort film. But this movie, yeah, it didn't live up to its potential. And maybe in retrospect, it was something he shouldn't have wasted his time on, because his originality and his commitment to it, is so unique, in the modern filmmaking space. But I still got a lot out of this movie. It's still, like it resonated even more the second time I saw it. And, it yeah, and watching it with your significant other and like getting to, because like often the movies I watch she's not interested in. So if she
Mm.
is, like that carries a little more gravity to it. But the this one will, I think, stick around in my mind. I won't mind popping it on and watching it. And it's kind of, to me it was a letdown, but on the whole for the year it's one of the best. Uh, it's what's inside is my number 9. The you articulated a lot of the reasons why this is worthwhile. And what I like loved about this is that it's the kind of movie that gives you all the information you need to figure out what is going on and keep up with it, even as it's going in places you never would have considered going. Yeah, like it's a much more energetic, version of like movies like, Coherence, where you have people in an enclosed space going through something inexplicable, and seeing how it all falls apart. And yeah, just a great movie. And I also want to see where this guy goes. Love Lies Bleeding is my number 7. That I am a slut for neo noir. This one was the most neo noir out of any movie this year. And yeah, I still think about all of its like really surreal moments, and it left me on a high, and I'm still kind of there. Like this is a special little movie in a year that, yeah, it got seen, and then I think it got forgotten because all anybody seems to remember about it is the giant lady at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Number 6. That's 6. 7. I had Long Legs. Unless I got my numbering wrong here, I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm so sad that, God, what's the director's name again? Oz Perkins. I'm just so
Yep.
sad that he's like making a movie called The Monkey. Am I right about that?
Yeah, the Stephen King
Yeah.
adaptation.
What? I don't know. I don't. Why are you doing this, buddy? Stay in your own headspace. Stop going. Like it makes me so mad when horror people just go into Stephen King's playground. Like I'm not as enamored with Stephen King as other people. So like
Mhm.
this movie though, super super special, super memorable. But this was probably, like, as far as horror goes, this was the high point of the year. And I know that a lot of other people
Yeah.
also hold it in high esteem, but it needs to be seen. It's so unique in how it presents everything. The going for like the production values of like 70s late night TV, and then shifting around with that, like I could appreciate all of the little like like the callbacks and the allusions to like people like the Amazing Randy and whatnot, but it just gets so completely fucked up and like off its gourd at the end to such an extent that, yeah, I'm still thinking about it. And I've rewatched this several times, and I think everybody else should as well. Number 5, Strange Darling. I think I might be one of the only people to like put this on an end of year list, but it just knocked my socks off when I first saw it. And like this, it turns the whole, like, woman in peril, like serial killer sort of, like, hunting a woman thing on its head so masterfully. And it has a twist that, yeah, like it's a great twist because once it's introduced, it just elevates the experience and it takes it to new places instead of just being oh, by the way, pulled the rug on you. Isn't that clever of me? No, like there was still more to dig into after that occurred. Did you ever get to see this one?
I didn't know. It's still on my list, and yeah, I think that people really did like this. I think unfortunately, this just it came out too early in the year, and
Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's like people tend to forget about that early year stuff once they get to this point, where they're making their lists and stuff. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things.
nothing but good thing. Giovanni Ribisi edited it. Number 4, the
Love
trailer,
this. I
yeah,
love this.
the trailer for this documentary reduced me to tears. The movie, like made me just like a blubbering, slobbering mess. Like the day after I watched it, I just found myself thinking about it, and I was just recommending it to everybody in my life. It tells the story of a young man who had a disability, extremely debilitating, who lived his life through World of Warcraft. And for anyone who has poo-pooed video games, who's
Mhm.
out there, they should watch this. Like I told my mom to watch it, just because she was an occupational therapist. She herself, has some disability after a stroke, and she yeah, like I'm tearing up, but it's like our conversation after she got to see that was, you know, made, a lot of things in my life, you know, a lot better. And if a
Mm.
movie could fucking do that for you, that's a powerful thing. And it's amazing that I didn't put this at number one because that's how much it still moves me. Dune Part Two is, was my number three, and like you kind of said, it's like it's hitting these benchmarks that we haven't seen since Lord of the Rings. And for myself personally, as I described it in our review, that was the feeling I had in the theater. It was like I was 11, 12 years old, going to Moria and Lothlorien for the first time. And it there's just so much that I have hope for because this succeeded to the degree that it did. And the I
Mm.
know that Denis Villeneuve isn't too keen on sticking around past making Dune Messiah, but Warner Brothers, from what I've heard, the chatter is they want two more movies after that, which means fucking God Emperor of Dune is gonna happen, which will be great because we'll get to see Worm Leto the Second, which is something
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see, but we won't count our eggs before they hatch. Number two, I've seen this the most recently, and I will admit I did not see it by traditional means because it is not widely out there as of yet. But that's The Brutalist, Brady Corbett's film. Oh my fucking god! Like I don't know, you need to see this, and I know that it might wind up being, falling into that category you referenced where it's like, yeah, only the critics and people in cities got to see this in the year that it technically came out. But yeah, this is like a 2025 movie to you, and I guess technically for me too. But it is such a epic, and like it's a grand, experience. It's all deliberate. Like I can't remember the last time a movie began with an overture. You know what I mean?
Mm.
That it
Mm.
actually had an intermission. Like it did all these classic Hollywood things, but it's exploring, an era that, we would look back on and consider to be like part of the golden age, of Hollywood filmmaking. And it's hitting a lot of those hallmarks. It's shot in VistaVision. Like that's the first thing you see when the overture finishes. You just see VistaVision come across with a classic. It looks like a period film right away, but then after that, it is just such a it's a monumental movie, and it's gonna deserve its Oscar when it wins it, and because it tells the story of an immigrant, for like a Hungarian survivor of the Holocaust, and oh dang it, the bear is stuck in the crib. Okay,
Oh.
the but you see how he comes to Philadelphia to live with a relative. He's just trying to get himself back on his feet, and he gets caught up in like doing these projects for this rich industrialist played by Guy Pearce, and it has a lot in common with other movies of this ilk, like The Master, and even Mank, David Fincher's film
Mm.
Mank, because it's digging into this dynamic between this visionary artist and then the rich guy who has pretensions, or is just bored, and is bringing them into their fold, but it's not for like the reasons that are actually good for the life of the artist. Like there are things that are going to go horribly wrong, and
Mm.
it does have a really shocking moment in its second act that I didn't see coming, that really like puts a dour note on just the mood of an already kind of depressing film. But it's the way that it's put together, the 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 whole experience. It's like it's amazing, and you got to see this movie. it almost was my number one, but I wanted to be a contrarian a little bit and put my underrated, film of the year as my number one. Because the Apprentice was just such a it was fun for me, but at the same
Mhm.
time it gave me so much to think about, and it it also had some really amazing performances. Like Uncle Armand White did his better than list, and this is the better Sebastian Stan performance. I haven't seen what's that movie called again?
A
The
Different
A
Man.
Different Man.
Mhm.
But I really can't qualify this. But to me, this is the performance of his from this year that's really being underlooked, because like he disappears into Trump, and
Mhm.
it's amazing that he was willing to do that, because I can imagine that there were quite a few people who were sent the script for this and were like, "Oh hell no, I'm never gonna touch this. Are you kidding me?" But so
Yep.
there, it took some bravery, and Jeremy Strong doing Roy Cohn, perfect, just
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. Can't recommend this movie enough. Luca, you can't have a mug. You're gonna break it.
Yeah, I
Shut.
watched this in the last 2 weeks, and I initially was gonna put this I was thinking about this for my most underrated because it does feel like this movie's getting the shaft a bit because of who its subject is. And I understand why that's the case,
Yeah,
as far as people just don't even want to think about Trump right now because they're about to be thinking about him for the next 4 years. And so
exactly. Yeah,
um,
we're already
I
taking
I
over
get
Greenland.
yeah. So I get why, people are sort of shafting this a bit, but it's unfortunate that it is happening because what's going to happen is time is going to be very nice to this movie, where in a decade from now, people are going to reappraise this. Once Trump is kind of a bit of a memory, a long gone memory, people are going to reappraise this film as good as it actually is. And so that is what I believe will happen. And yeah, Jeremy Strong's amazing in this, and I love that you called out the birthday scene because it's so fantastic. The fake cufflinks and the cake with all like the sparklers, and just it's so uncomfortable and it's so sad. Just
Yeah,
just like just like existentially sad, and yeah, I liked it a lot too.
yeah. It's because it's funny because with movies about presidents, they tend to come out like W. I think was released in 2008, the last year that Bush was in office,
Yep.
and that's a lesser film. Bill Clinton hasn't had a movie about him, but he's had an American Crime Story about him. And Obama and Michelle got the Netflix treatment for their love story. Like that's all
Yeah.
we've had about those particular figures. But if there is, I want somebody to have the bravery that it took to make The Apprentice, and I want someone to do, Weekend at Joe's, and just do the Biden presidency. Like that's gonna make a great movie someday. Because like, that's
Mhm.
fertile ground. Moving on
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
our top five TV series is what was your approach with this?
Yeah, so I mean, basically just the five that I most enjoyed, I considered both, seasons of TV shows that are already established and then also, newer shows. And so that was really my only strategy here. But yeah, just to kick it off, I don't need to belabor these as much as the movies because I've talked about I think every single one of these
Yeah,
on the show. But Evil got its final season. That show remained a really fun watch. All God, what did it get? I think 5 seasons total. I want to say, and
that's
so
solid.
yeah, and so that it remained a really fun, compelling show. The Day of the Jackal, the first season, I believe they are making more. I mean, with that ending, they make it seem like they're going to make more, but yeah, just a really fun, spy type operator core show, operator porn and sniping porn, that type of stuff. Just really, really fantastic action show. I loved all just the country hopping and the globe trekking the show did. It seemed like a very expansive, expensive show, even though I don't think it was
Hmm.
as much as you think it was. But and then number three, Slow Horses, another show that is on like its fourth season now, I believe, and they basically just keep adapting these books, at like a clip of like I think up until now they've done two a year, and so it's going very fast, and they're starting to slow down now because the Apple TV is starting to catch up with the British airings of the show, and so it's going to slow down now. But yeah, just Gary Oldman is fantastic in it. It remains a compelling spy show. It's basically Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy the series. If anybody wants to know, kind of the feeling of the show
In the
with a little
modern
more
day,
humor.
yeah,
Yeah, in the
yeah.
modern day. And number two, Shogun, the show that everybody loved this year, and I think was, just a really good adaptation of that book. I also, was inspired to read the book this year, which I did, sort of at when you first started talking about the old show, the '80s show, and I really loved both the book and this adaptation, and I want to see what we're gonna get for the
Yeah.
second season because they've run out of runway, and so we'll see if they can, write to that caliber of James Clavell. But I guess it remains to be seen. And then yeah, my number one, Interview with a Vampire. This was the show this year that for me was like it was the only show I watched that was like appointment TV, where the second that episode went up, I had to watch it. It was like Succession. I felt that way about Succession too, where, the second that episode appeared on HBO Max, I was like, I need to go watch it right now. And that's how I felt about the second season, specifically of this show, because I enjoyed the first season, but they really kicked it up a notch with the second season. It's really become less it's less about like all of the gore and like the like disgusting, like feeding scenes and stuff like that, and it's really it's more about the characters now. It's more about the drama, and like you, I've sort of been experiencing vampire fatigue. We could probably stop doing that now. We can stop doing vampire stuff, but this show sort of overcame that for me, and so yeah, I want to see what they're gonna keep, because I mean there's a lot of Anne Rice you can do, and this show has kept adapting the Anne Rice books just like Slow Horses has been adapting those books. And I want to see, I guess the next season is going to be like the season where they become like rock stars.
Queen of the
It's like set in
Damned.
like, yeah, Queen
Yes.
of the Dam. And so yeah, I want to see what that's gonna be like. And so yeah, looking forward to it. But yeah, those are my five.
I'm banking Interview with a Vampire. I'm gonna have to
Mhm.
get back on board with that soon. And Slow Horses. Number five on my list isn't done yet, but it took me by surprise because I have been keeping Star Wars TV at arm's length if it isn't Andor. I don't watch Kenobi. I definitely didn't watch The Acolyte. Didn't watch Ahsoka, but I was intrigued by the idea of Goonies in Star Wars. That premise that hooked me in to watch the first episode of it. And the idea, behind this, if you are unaware, is that these kids on a planet that's kind of sealed off from the rest of the galaxy accidentally dig up a pirate ship and go on board. They wake up the pirate droid that's in there and they become its crew, and they accidentally take off and leave their homeworld and go fucking out into the Star Wars galaxy with no bearing on how to get home. And along the way, they pick up this disgraced, pirate lord played by Jude Law, who's force sensitive and like lies to them about being a Jedi. And
Hmm.
it it just does something that none of these other any other besides Andor, any other Star Wars content just hasn't bothered to do, which is just have fun in the sandbox. You know what I mean? Like they're not trying to do
Mhm.
callbacks every 5 seconds. They're showing me aliens I have no experience with, and it kind of reminds me of like Pirates of the Caribbean to a degree as
Mm.
well, just because of the role that the like the pirates chasing them, because the hook basically is that there were a bunch of these planets that were sealed away, and the one that they happened to be from at Adam was the place where all of the old Republic credits were minted. So
Okay.
so they'd have access to infinite money if the pirates ever
Mhm.
got there. And but the kids themselves, they go through some genuinely good development, and I'm surprised that I have so much to say about it. But like for me, this has been weekly appointment. Oh, the next one's up. I'm watching it. I'm so mad that they're only like a half hour long though. But John Watts and like the Daniels directed an episode. It's all good so far, and I I want more of this. But it would also be good if they could have just made a movie. I guess, because
Yeah.
like like I am just not a fan of how they do their TV shows. Disney Plus. They don't
Mhm.
give me enough. I am just like I'm locked in. I'm ready for it just to keep going, and then they're like credits, and I'm just like fuck you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Secret level. Like on the whole, I really I'm only really putting this on there because of They Know No Fear. Like, I've been waiting for that ever since I first saw the Astartes short film, and this is the successor to that. Like that particular 15-minute episode is worth the whole price of admission. And I just want them to do a feature length. They might as well, because it's going to be impossible. Like I'm saying, it's impossible. They're supposedly doing it, but it's a hell of a lot easier to do a Space Marines 40K story as a CGI animated film or series versus using all of the treasure hoard that Amazon has to adapt the Horus Heresy, which would be the dream, but they're never going to do that. They can't do that. But I love Secret Level. The other shorts are worth watching too. I also put the Day of the Jackal on here. It had, for just being like a guy who just snipes people, what I loved was just seeing all the weird things he'd have to do to make sure that he could get his shot. Like like the one where he's like on a boat with a remote controlled gyroscope sniper rifle. Like
Yeah.
that was
It's
really
like a
really
steady
cool.
cam rig.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I also was, kind of like I wasn't as into the MI6 intrigue. Like that was I was like, where the fuck is this going? But that got better, as the season went on, and I'm looking forward for more of that. I put the second season of Squid Game at number two. It didn't get, even though I was. This is the only show that's ever like locked me in and made me binge the whole fucking thing this year. And I actually felt like it was time well spent because they only gave me half the fucking story.
Yeah.
Like this is Breaking Bad season, like 8A or whatever the fuck how they broke up the last season of that, and I just want to see how it all ends, and that's the best thing that they could maybe do. Number one, I have Shogun. From the moment that I did that minisode about Richard Chamberlain and discovered that they were making it, that's the first time I heard about it. Was seeing
Mhm.
the trailer while I was putting that episode together, and I was really really excited for it. It paid off in every conceivable way, and I had just wish it had, like, I belabored the point, but I just wish it would just be standalone limited series. Please don't try and do more of this. They're not gonna. It's going to fail unless they really blow my mind, and they're able to come up with some way to continue a story that up to this point has been finished, whether it's the book or the other adaptations that have come before. But yeah, these were my top five. I didn't watch a lot of shows in general, at least ones that were
Mhm.
worth writing home about. I watched a lot of Spidey and His Amazing Friends, let me tell you, as of late. but that's not up to me. That's up to November.
Now we have one more segment, right? Yeah.
A couple more. We also have our anticipated. So,
Yeah.
what are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah, so I kind of poured over the 2025 releases, and my first one, I guess, is pretty self-explanatory, I mean, I think a lot of people are looking forward to this. It's just Superman. As a lover of the comics, as a weekly reader of both Superman comics, Superman and Action Comics, I want to see what James Gunn has up his sleeve for this character and this universe because if everything goes according to plan, this might be the beginning of our next like decade long cinematic universe. And I really hope that Gunn understands the character because when you look at the superhero stuff that he's done, like Guardians and Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, it's all mostly the same tone. It's, lots of humor, lots of needle drops, lots of violence, lots of irreverence. And, he needs to understand that's not what Superman is. That he can't make the same thing for Superman. And if he thinks that's what he's gonna do with it, I think he's kind of in for a rude awakening. I might if that's what Superman ends up being, I might have to just go join up with all the Indian Zack Snyder fans who want to restore the Snyderverse. But um, my second pick is tentatively titled "The Battle of Bacton Cross," which is most definitely a working title. This is the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie. This is starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Benicio del Toro, Sean Penn,
Yeah.
our boy Wood Harris, who played Avon Barksdale from The Wire.
Really?
It's reported that he somehow, I don't know how this happened, but PTA got a budget of around 100 million for this.
Holy shit!
And it's actually a sci-fi film. And there is also a very, very I wouldn't take this with anything more than a grain of salt, but it is rumored that this is an adaptation of the Pynchon novel Vineland. That's sort of just the
But yeah, because did I hear you say that this is going to be a sci-fi film?
that well, it's separate rumors. People,
Okay.
all this movie is right now is a bunch of set photos and basically who's in it. Everything else is a rumor. It's basically some people are saying it's a sci-fi film based off the set photos. Some people are saying that it's an adaptation of Vineland.
What the hell?
People really just don't know right now. But I really want to just see what this thing is. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it looks very interesting either way. And my third film, as anticipated, is Frankenstein. The adaptation, of the book, probably the 10th or 11th adaptation at this point of the book, but it's by Guillermo del Toro, who is a guy who we have seen firsthand his love for Frankenstein. If you'll remember his giant Frankenstein head, part of his art collection that he has, and this one's starring Oscar Isaac and Mia Goth and Christoph Waltz, and so it's got a killer cast. And he said the only real thing, this is another one, we only really have set photos. We don't have much more to go on at this point. But one of the things that Del Toro has said is that his inspiration for the look of it is heavily inspired by comic artist Bernie Wrightson's drawings.
Yeah.
His Frankenstein book. And so that has me very excited.
Yeah, and in his collection when we went to that exhibit, I think he had some like the original pages for that particular comic.
He did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So yeah, looking forward to that one.
And I just want to ask you, what did you think of that Superman trailer?
It was okay. I like the involvement of crypto. Like it seems like crypto is heavily involved, and I'm more intrigued by the photos that we've gotten in the past than I am the trailer because There was that one photo of Superman like sitting in that skyscraper and he's like putting on his boot. And then in the background, there's like this giant, like pink, I don't know what it
Like a
is,
kaiju.
planet or
Yeah.
yeah, like kaiju. And so I want to know what exactly he's doing because yeah, the collection of DC characters that he is assembling for this movie is really, really unique. It's characters that don't really go together in the comics often, and so I want to see what he's doing with that.
Because, yeah, this, by all accounts, appears to be an established DC universe. They don't have to have origin stories for anybody,
Hmm.
except for the
Yep.
fact that this might be the first time they're all interacting with each other. And that's probably the way to go, as superhero fatigue is shrugged off potentially for that movie. My anticipated, I guess I'm going to start at, with the three at the top there, but The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, which is going to be the first traditionally animated, theatrically released Looney Tunes movie since what was it?
Back in
Back in
action? Is it
Action.
back in
Yeah,
action?
which I have
Yeah.
on DVD. But I'm down for that. Like I, struggle with finding movies that I'd be okay taking my kids to, but like you can't go wrong with Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck fighting aliens. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because I think that's the premise. I'm all for that. And then number two, I have Untitled Trey Parker film. This because yeah, this will be his first movie that he's like actually directed since Team America World Police, and it's a collaboration with Kendrick Lamar. And
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar is going to be playing a slave reenactor, at like one of those living museums, who finds out that his like girlfriend is the descendant of the slave owners who owned his ancestors. That's all we really know about it, but I there's just too much happening in that to not have me
Yeah.
excited. But then number one, ever since they popped the trailer out for it, 28 years later, good golly, Miss Molly, my ticket's already bought. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I, like Angie and I just rewatched 28 Days Later pretty recently, and that you're right. Actually, the day before the trailer even came out, I had watched the movie, and then I was like, I was primed. I'm ready. I need it. I want it. Give it to me. And the fact that it's Boyle and Garland, back again, because like they're writing and directing the movie, aren't they? Or am I mistaken?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Boyle directing and Garland wrote it, I believe. Yep.
perfect. Yeah, because the 28, month or yeah, was it 28 weeks later? It was okay, but it did
Yeah.
not live up to the potential, that was there. And the fact that the boys are got the band back together for it, that makes me very excited.
Mhm. Yeah. What do you make of the? Do you know about like the poem that is in the trailer for that?
I haven't been able to find anything out about that. I guess I didn't look too
Because it.
deeply. What do you
Yeah.
know
So
about it?
in the trailer, there's this poem that they basically are using as the soundtrack for the trailer, and it's specifically a radio uh performance of the poem that was done I think in like the 20s or 30s, but the poem is a Rudyard Kipling poem called Boots, which is a poem
Oh,
about the British soldiers like walking across Africa and like dying from like starvation and like exposure and stuff. And the poem is just about walking and walking and walking. And that's why it's called Boots. And that's why it has that cadence to it. But I thought that
wow.
was crazy. That was a very, very unique usage of a something like that for a trailer.
Very British. Very
Yeah.
British. Like it has
Mhm.
that authenticity. That's cool. I'm glad that you told
Mhm.
me that, because
Mhm.
I could not understand what was going on. My thought was, it's like this is like a weird like ritual that the people have taken on in this apocalypse to like beat certain practices into the heads of the populace, but that makes a lot more sense. That it's something from their history that they've clung on to, kind of like Christian Bale and Gerard Butler recreating The Empire Strikes Back in Reign of Fire.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, but now out of the mentionables of the year, what was yours?
Yeah, so mine, when I go back and think about the year, the thing that stands out is, as a comic lover, Ghost Machine Comics. And this is a new imprint. Well, I mean, I guess at this point, it's been around for about 2 years, but it's really, really gaining traction now. Um, it is a imprint that was started by Jeff Johns, and Brian Hitch and Gary Frank are kind of the big headliners, and they basically started this comic imprint and a new universe that is called the Universe of the Unnamed, and it's basically these right now these 4 or 5 series that are loosely connected, and eventually I think their plan is to sort of connect them more concretely once they're all better established as singular series. And yeah, I've been getting all of them from my local comic book store because they're also really, really good, really well written, and really, well drawn. And yeah, just looking forward to seeing where it goes. The headliner comic to all of them is this comic called Geiger, which is about this guy who's just walking around the post-apocalypse, with these like, what would you call him? I guess he's radioactive. The guy, because he got stuck in one of the nuclear blasts, and the only way in which he can keep his powers like contained is by putting like these, what is it? Is it boron rods
Yep.
or barium or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that? He
boron.
puts
Yeah.
Yeah, he puts them like he has these boron rods in his back, and when he like takes them out of his like holsters in his back, he just like basically like explodes with radiation, and it's just a really cool idea. And yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes. It's all the comics have been really great.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. No, I'll have to if yeah, I always talk about getting back into comics, but what I'm intrigued by with this is that it kind of seems like they're from like disparate timelines. So how
Mhm.
exactly are they all connected, and how are they going to be able to tell short of having like a weird time anomaly bringing everyone into the same moment? Will it more so like if they ever do like a crossover event, will it be like more so like one of those things where like they're all fighting the same fight, like in their
Hmm.
own moment as opposed
Well,
to together?
the way I've sort of the what I'm guessing is going to happen is the a lot of the characters in it seem like they're either immortal or their life has been majorly extended by like unnatural means. Like Geiger Geiger has lived so long because of like the radiation shit. There is another character called Redcoat who basically he was a British soldier during the Revolutionary War, who had like a occult ritual performed on him by George Washington, and so he's living forever. And then the other big character is a robot called Junkyard Joe, who's basically immortal just by the fact that he's a robot.
Yeah,
He won't die. And so I think that's the direction they're gonna go with it. Is basically all of these characters have had their life prolonged by some unnatural means, basically.
interesting. Right on. Well, people, go to your local comic book shop, give them some business. I'll have to get on that myself. But my picks are both. I'm cheating. I have two, just because
Yeah.
between the two of them, I have probably put about nearly 500 hours of my life into playing them this year. Baldur's Gate 3, Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader. They're both, just the best examples we have of what a CRPG should be, what a video game I think should be. Because you have to have a respect for your players and a respect for their ability to not only just make judgment calls of their own, but to just experiment with the problems that you put in front of them. And they both are just infinitely rewarding. You could play these games over and over again forever. And I probably will. I finally beat Baldur's Gate 3. I got an ending that wasn't perfect, but it was satisfying. Rogue Trader, Jesus Christ. Like, I did not take into account the amount of variables that were at play in determining what your ending is. Because, yeah, there's whether or not you're good, evil, or neutral, or if you're, but there's like 20 different decisions that factor into what happens to the people you care about, what happens to you. And because at the end of the game, there's just this giant like book that you get to read, letting you know what happened after the after the final battle occurs. As far as your relationships, like the different factions you were partnered with, and I was just blown away, at the end of it, and I immediately started a new playthrough. Because I want to see, well, if I go full heretic, what kind of choices do I get to make? Because I was an iconoclast, but these games, I know they're not like technically, I think, Rogue Trader was 2024. Baldur's Gate definitely was not, but they consumed my life to a significant degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad you finally finished Baldur's Gate, because that whole final segment, that whole final chunk of it is amazing. I love how you basically can call in all of like the friends that you've made over the game. You just like call them in like one after the other. I loved how that whole final battle played out.
Yeah, it's staggering. Like there's a reason why certain video game developers looked at the reception to Baldur's Gate 3 and were like, oh, guys, you can't expect us all to be this good. And it's like, no, motherfucker, you should be. And like 20 years ago, everybody was chasing that level of excellence. Like, did you play Veilguard? Just as an example here.
I did, yeah.
My God. How was that?
It's pretty. I mean, this is what I'll say about it. It's fun to play. Like the moment to moment gameplay is fun. Like you're having a good time actually, doing the actions, playing the game. But the writing is god awful. I mean, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
People have posted clips online, and the writing is just awful, and most of the characters are awful. I kind of speed run through the game because I was a very, very big fan of the previous Dragon Age games, specifically Origins and Inquisition. And I just wanted to see how it ended, basically.
Yeah.
So.
I bring that up because like that was a game that had no respect for its players' choices.
Yeah.
And it makes me so scared for what Mass Effect is going to be like. Whatever the new Mass Effect game is.
Oh, for sure.
Because it's the same team as Veilguard, from what I understand. And they need to look to these games. These two in specific. They need to open up their sensibilities a little bit. And, I know these games are expensive. They take a really long time. They spend years in early access. But I think that's what you kind of have to do if you want to make the best game you can these days. Because whatever quadruple A gaming is, like Rogue Trader isn't necessarily that. It's scaled down. It's barely triple A in terms of its graphics and its like voice acting and the presentation, but the gameplay itself, top notch. And you got to get that alchemy right. But that's my mentionable. What's me?
And I guess that's the show, right?
That is the show. We got... God, yeah. I didn't think we were going to go this long, and but we have a lot to talk about as per usual, and you need to wait. We're wrapping up here, honey. I promise you. And I guess looking ahead to the rest of January here, Matt's gonna have a mini-sode coming out on the 20th. And what are you going to be talking about there?
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about television's golden age. And a lot of people talk about that sort of nebulous idea of the golden age of television. I think a lot of people agree that it sort of began around the time The Sopranos came out. And but what people can't seem to agree on is when it ended and if it ended or if we're
Mm.
still in it. And so I'm going to be kind of talking about when I think the golden age of TV ended and why I think that is the case.
We're going to have lunch.
So,
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Those are, because, yeah, I feel like this conversation, it was started like about, yeah, 10 years ago or so, even 15 years ago.
mhm.
And yeah, like you say, we keep on coming back to whether or not we're out of it yet. And that will be followed by November. I need you to be quiet. But she needs to talk to me. Like, I've been working on a minisode for a while. My whole life has been in chaos. I'm gonna finally poop that sucker out. Talking about miniseries is that I want people to revisit. That I think are perfect for a cold weekend where you can't go outside and you doesn't want to do anything but sit on a couch under a blanket. Like, that's what they're perfect for. And
Mhm.
we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna record on, for the February 3rd Monday. But we will get that when we get there because, like you pointed out, we're in the doldrums. This is the dark times, and we have to see what's in theaters,
Yeah.
what's available, what's local. But until then, 2024 was a year, and this is what we liked. And we also know that there's plenty that we could still see, but we will, see you all on the flip side at the end of the month for our feature review. Then, take care, everybody.
Yeah.